Hi everybody, this is the solution for last week's interview question. And it reads, sexy prime numbers are prime numbers that differ by 6. Examples are 7 and 13, 11 and 17, and so on. So your job is to find all the pairs of sexy prime numbers up to 500. So the first thing I'd like to do is copy that question and actually put it in my comments. So after that, and I'll go ahead and do a line break so we can see this, we've got our question. And the next thing is to figure out the steps. So to handle this, sometimes there'll be interviews where you have to do this in front of people, but generally the employer likes to see the comments being written out because it says that you're human and you're doing everything possible to solve the problem and you're being humble. You don't mind sharing your thought process. So no matter how that thought process is, whatever you get on paper or on the screen or whatever the whiteboard is that they give you, you can communicate with them your logic. So here, my idea is I'm going to need a function that tests prime. Then I'm going to need a loop. Because we're going up to 500, that's definitely a keyword indicating that we need a loop up to 500. Then I'm communicating with myself. At every turn of the loop, I need to check for a prime and add 6 to check for a prime in that number to understand whether it's a pair or not. Lastly, I'll need to output or save the pair somewhere. So let's start with the first one, the function that will test prime. So remember, a prime number is going to be 7, 11, 13. So every time you get a prime number, you need to figure out what that prime number is. So let's say I have a prime number that gets put up here, okay? If that number is 1, we immediately need to return false. If it's 2, we return 2. And the reason we do that is the prime number doesn't, 1 is the minimal integer, so it can't be prime. So if someone is 2, we return true. Otherwise, we want to know the difference between 1 and 2, because 2 plus 6 would be 8, but that wouldn't be a prime. So we have a 3-prong conditional here. And in this case, what we're going to do is whatever the value is, some number that gets passed, we'll start with 2. And as long as that number is less than the number that was passed into the function, we'll increment. Then we'll use the modulus operator to say, okay, if some num divided by k, the number from the loop, happens to be equal to 0, we return false. And that's because it's not a dividend. It's not a prime number. So let's take it, for example, let's do 7, okay? As we go through there, and go 3, 4, 5, 6. So let's take 5. So 5 divided by k, let's say the sum number came in, it was 7. Then if some number modulus k equals 0, we'd return false, otherwise we return true. So for each number, we're testing that number against the loop that goes up to that number. And that's how we can tell if a number is prime or not. It's basically this block of code right here. So that said, at every turn of the loop, we need our loop next, by the way, and every turn of that we need to check for the prime and check the other one. So here's our loop. I just use a typical I. Notice I'm using let because it's pertaining to that specific code block. And then in each turn of the loop, I have a y variable that equals I plus 6. So this is the alternate number. And if test prime I and test prime I plus 6, then console.log I and 6 are the sexy primes. So I can basically, log this to test the prime. But let's go ahead and just check out our console. So I'm going to hit save, comment that out, and go to my sexy primes. And in this case, we can run the code within the console. I'm just going to do this. I'll run the test prime. I'll do a for let, and I'll go right to this week's interview question. And we'll open up the console. Let's see, tools. Actually, I think I can do the tools right here. I saved it as a JS, but we're fine. So now if I hit this and hit refresh, it should run. Let me figure out why. Oh, because the function never got run. So let's just do test prime 6. Actually, this should be fine right here too as well. So this is the function prime. The script should work. I'm actually going to take this and run the function inside the console. There we go. And we can run it. And there you go. So 5 and 11, that's true. 7 and 13, 11 and 7. As we scan these, those are sexy primes because they're paired together in both prime. So that's a very popular question, and this is how it would be done in JavaScript. Now, as I look back at my code, things can always be refined. For example, I didn't carve out any memory for y. I can easily do test prime I plus 6 and do the argument inside here. So there are ways that all code can be improved. I could use the function with the arrow syntax up here and make it a little bit more ES6 friendly. But here is a good example. But one thing I really want to point out is the concept of breaking apart your thought process and running that code after you comment everything out and get it in your head. And I strongly recommend copying the question so you know what the expectations are.